us to take the f function, which is x plus 2, and then they want you to take the g function, which is negative 4x plus 2, and they want you to combine them using addition. So we're going to add them, and we're just going to add like terms. So now we're going to add them combining like terms. So like right here I have a 1x. What can it be combined with? Okay, and when you add those, you get a negative 3x. So I'm done with those. Okay, I also have a 2, which is a constant, and another 2, which is a constant. When you add those, you get a 4. And then that's your final answer. This polynomial is known as a linear binomial. Linear because the highest exponent is 1. Binomial because it's 2 terms. Alright, number 12. They want you to take the f function, which is a squared minus 5a, and then they want you to take the g function, which is 4a plus 3, and what do they want you to do to them? Multiply them. Now, I believe on the previous pages, let me write that closer since it's multiplication. On the previous pages, they didn't write it like that, did they? On Friday's page, they wrote multiply like this, h times g of n, and today they're writing it like this. It's the same thing. It just means multiply the f function by the g function. So how do you multiply two functions? Well distributed, and in this case we can use FOIL because it's a binomial times a binomial. So a squared times 4a is 4a cubed. Those are my first terms. Now I can do my outer terms. A squared times 3 is 3a squared. Then I can do my inner terms, which are negative 5a and 4a. Negative 20a squared. And then I can do my last terms, which are negative 5a and 3, and what does that give me? Negative 15a. Is that the final answer? Why not? Right, there are like terms that can be combined. What can be combined? Right, both of these terms have a squared as their variable, so you can combine them. Everything else just drops down, but that 3a squared minus 20a squared is negative 17a squared. This polynomial is known as a cubic trinomial. Cubic because the highest exponent is a 3. Trinomial because it has 3 terms. Alright, number 13. This time they want you to start with the f function, which is 2x plus 1, and they want you to divide it by the g function, which is x squared minus 3x. Okay, with the numerator, is there anything in the numerator that I can factor out by GCF? Do 2x and 1 have anything in common? And does it matter if you factor out a 1? No, so we're just going to leave it 2x plus 1. Is there a GCF in the denominator's binomial? There's nothing that they have in common. An x. So if I take out an x, what does that leave? X minus 3. Is there anything that I can cross out? No. So that's as far as you can go. There's nothing to cross out, so you can't do anything else. Alright, can I erase all this? Alright, number 14. This time they want you to start with the f function, which is 2a minus 1. And then they want the g function, which is a squared plus 3a. And they want you to add them. Okay, so starting with this 2a, what can we add it with? 3a. And that makes a 5a. Negative 1, can it combine with anything? No, so you just bring it down. A squared, is there anything they can combine with? No, so you just bring it down, but I'm going to bring it down in the front because shouldn't my highest exponent come first? And then, now that it's in the front, I need a sign here. What sign does it need to be? Plus. Who can name this polynomial? It is a trinomial because it has 3 terms. Quadratic because its highest exponent is 2. So quadratic trinomial. Okay, I want you to take a second and try number 15. Number 15. Shh, guys, when I say let's go over it, that means close your mouth. I want the h function first, which is 4t plus 5. And then the g function, which is t squared minus 5t. And this time they want me to subtract them. Anytime you subtract polynomials, what do you have to deal with first? Right, the sign, this negative sign, distributes to everything that comes after it inside the parentheses. If there were something on the outside over here, it would not distribute to that. Just what's in the parentheses. Now, that does not affect the first binomial. It stays 4t plus 5. But then this t squared becomes minus t squared, and this negative 5t becomes positive 5t. Now when I start combining like terms, what can I combine with the 4t? And that makes how many? 9t. Is there anything I can combine with this constant of 5? No, so I just bring it down. And is there anything I can combine with the negative t squared? No, there's nothing left. So it comes in the front. Since it's squared, it goes first. And then we obviously need a filler here. What sign? Plus, because that was a positive 9 you got when you added those two numbers. What do we name this? Quadratic trinomial. Okay, number 16. They want you to take the f function first, which is what?
Negative 3x.
Right, and they want you to divide it by the g function, which is
X plus.
right. Will you do me a favor and get that red thing and don't hang it on my window, please? Yeah. Okay, when you look at the numerator, is there anything you can GCF? No. You can't pull anything out of a 3a squared or a 1 besides 1, and factoring out a 1 is not going to change anything. It's magnetic. It goes in the black. Okay, is there anything we can factor out of x plus? No, since there's nothing we can do, that's the final answer. Okay, I want you to go ahead and try 17 and 18 by yourself. Number 17. They want you to take the g function, which is x minus 4, and the f function, which is x cubed plus 5x, and they want you to add them. So when you did that, you should have ended up with x cubed plus 6x minus 4. Is that what you got?
Yes.
That is a cubic trinomial. Okay, number 18, they wanted you to take the g function, which is 4x plus 2, and the h function, which is x minus 3, and subtract them. Before you can start that process, you need to distribute the negative, which will not affect the first binomial, but it will affect this one. It'll change the signs. Now when you combine like terms, that becomes a 3x, and these two constants make a 5. Is that what you got? What's that called? Linear binomial. Okay, go ahead and try 19 and 20. Number 19, they want you to start with the g function, which is 3x plus 3, and add it to the h function. When you did that, you should have ended up with negative 2x squared plus 3x plus 6. That is a quadratic trinomial. Remember, guys, you're supposed to do these ahead of time, not copy them after I've given you the answer. Okay, g function is 2x minus 3. The f function is x squared minus 1, and they want you to add them. Well, the 2x doesn't combine with anything. The x squared doesn't, so I bring it down. And then the negative 3 plus negative 1 is a negative 4. That's a quadratic trinomial. Go ahead and flip to the next page. We're moving on to something different called composition functions. Okay, see how normally it's f of x, but now they say to find f of g of x? Doesn't that mean they've replaced this x with g of x? Let me say that again because people aren't listening. Okay, number 1, let me say this again. See how it's f of x, but then all of a of a sudden they say find f of g of x. So in this x place, they've now replaced it with that. They want you to start with the f of x function, which is x minus 2. But they don't want you to write the x. They want you to replace it with the g of x function, which is negative x minus 5. They want you to plug the g function into the x of the f function. Okay, let me say that again. They're wanting, see how g is kind of sitting inside the f function? They want you to take the g function, which is this, and they want you to plug all of that into the x place of the f function. So that's what we've done. That's the hardest part. Now all we have to do is simplify. Negative x, and then negative 5 minus 2 is negative 7, and you're done. That is a linear binomial. Linear because the highest exponent is a 1. Binomial because it has 2 terms. Okay, number 3. This time, it's written a little bit differently, but it means the same thing. This open circle means h of g of x. That can also be written just like the previous problem was. It means the same thing. It means insert the g function, which is this, into the x of the h function. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write the h function, which is 3x plus 3. But in the x place of it, I'm going to insert the g function, which is 4x. Now what do I do? Okay, and that becomes 12x and then plus 3. And that's your final answer. It's also a linear binomial. Linear because the highest exponent is 1. Binomial because it's 2 terms. Okay, why don't you try number 5? Number 5. This time they want you to take the f function, which is a minus 2. A minus 2, but I didn't write the a because they're wanting you to replace the a with the g function, a plus 5. Now all you do is combine like terms. Bring down the a, the 5 minus 2 makes a positive 3, and you're done. That's also a linear binomial. Number 7. They want you to start with the g function, which is 4x plus 2. And in the x place, which I didn't write, what do they want you to plug into it? The same thing, 4x plus 2. So what do we do to simplify that? Right. So 4 times 4 is 16x. 4 times 2 is 8. And then you drop this 2 down, so your final answer becomes 16x plus 10. Okay, go ahead and try number 9. When you start with the g function, it's 2t plus 4. But they want you to replace the t with the g function, which is 2t plus 4. So when you distribute that 2 to everything in the parentheses, it becomes 4t plus 8. But then you got to bring that 4 down, and you end up with 4t plus 12 as your final answer. Okay, we're going to work our way up. Number 10. They want you to start with the h function this time, which is negative 4n plus 2. Okay, negative 4n plus, oops, I wrote n, plus 2. But inside this h function, they want you to plug in the g function, which is n cubed minus 3n. So the first thing I'm going to do is distribute the negative 4 to the n cubed and the negative 4 to the negative 3n. That'll give me negative 4n cubed plus 12n, and then you just bring down the plus 2. Nothing can be combined, so you're done. You have a cubic trinomial. Okay, I want you to try number 8. Okay, number 8. They want you to start with the h function, which is negative 4n plus 4. But inside of where the n is, they want you to replace it with the g function, which is negative 3n minus 1. So you would have distributed the negative 4 and got 12n plus 4. But then when you add that other 4 to it at the end, you get 12n plus 8. Is that what you got? Okay, number 6. This is just a different way of writing g of f of t. It's just a different way to write it. It means the same thing. They want you to take the f function and plug it in the g function. Well, what is the g function? Okay, this one's going to require a little more work, so I'm going to make some scratch paper. Okay, the g function is what? T squared plus 1. So t squared plus 1. But in the place of that t, they want you to plug in what? Negative 3t minus 1. What does that mean when something's squared? There's two of them. So let's write out both of them. Because squared means that it's multiplied by itself. So we're going to write them both out. Don't forget that plus 1. Now how do we combine that? Well, FOIL, because remember it's multiplication. Negative 3t times negative 3t is positive 9t squared. Okay, because it's two negatives. Negative 3t times negative 1 is positive 3t. And then my inner terms are a negative 1 and a negative 3t, which makes another positive 3t. And then my last terms are a negative 1 and negative 1, which makes a positive 1. And then don't forget about this positive 1 that's hanging on the outside to bring down. And so now 9t squared is the only term of its kind. Those two combine to make a 6t, and these two combine to make a 2. Okay, number 4. Go ahead and try number 4. They want you to start with the f function, which is what?
Well, close the door.
They want you to start with the f function, which is what? Plus 3. So 2x plus 3. But in the x, I didn't write it because they want you to replace it with x minus 1. Now all you do is distribute that 2. That gives you 2x minus 2. But when you add 3 to that negative 2, you get a positive 1. Is that what you got? All right. You better pay attention on number 2. Okay, here we go. They want you to start with the f function, which is a cubed. And then they want you to add 3a to it. So look, there were 2 a's in the f function. That's why I left 2 blanks. Because in each of those blanks, they want you to plug in the what function? The g function, which is 2a plus 4. And you have to do it in both a places. Guys, shut your mouths. Okay, so now, doesn't this 2a plus 4 cubed literally mean there's 3 of these? And then over here, can't you distribute that 3 to both of those and get 6a plus 12? Okay, so now, this is going to take some work. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to FOIL the first 2 binomials. So you're going to do the first terms, the outer terms, the inner terms, and the last terms. When you do that, 2a times 2a is 4a squared. 2a times 4 is 8a. 4 times 2a is another 8a. So isn't that going to make that a 16a right there in the middle? And then 4 times 4 is 16. But now we haven't dealt with that third 2a plus 4. So now we have to distribute those. So I'm going to need some more scratch paper. Okay, so now I'm going to distribute 2a to all of that. So 2a times 16 is 32a. 2a times 16a is 32a squared. And 2a times 4a squared is 8a cubed. Now I have to distribute the 4 to everything. 4 times 16 is what? 64. 4 times 16a is 64a. And can I write that up underneath this one because they're the same, so I'm going to combine them? And then 4 times 4a squared is... And can I write that one up under this a squared? Okay, and then I want to show you something else. Didn't we still have this left over that we haven't done anything with? That's a 6a, so it can go under those. That's a constant, so it can go under the 64. Now you just combine your like terms. How many a's do I have? 102. How many a squareds do I have? 48, so positive 48a squared. How many a cubes do I have? So just bring that down, 8a cubed, and then how many constants do I have? 76. Is that the way we would leave our answer? How would you write the final answer? 8a cubed plus 48a squared plus 102a plus 76. What is the name of this polynomial? It is not quadratic. It's cubic. And then there's no special name for it. You just say polynomial with 4 terms.